Oh, okay, everyone. I think we're ready to we have a quorum here. We're ready to proceed. So we have Ms. Griffiths, Mr. Ponarelli, myself, Mr. Fagioli, Mr. Conley, Mr. Hardcastle, Mr. Andrade, and Mr. Amoroso. So we have a quorum for tonight. So I'll call the meeting to order. I don't have any opening remarks. First order of business is approval of minutes from September 25th, 2024. Any discussion? We have a motion. Wait, a second? Second by Dominic. All those in favor? Okay, motion approved. Thank you. Second item under new business is a report of our fiscal year 24 audit. This is for the year ending June 30th, 2024. So we have our representative from the audit firm, Mr. Parisi. If you want to come and just give a presentation and go over some of the highlights of the audit.
Good evening. So I just want to start by thanking Ray for his assistance in getting this done. This is the earliest we've been able to finish in probably since before COVID. So as all things considered, you had a pretty straightforward year. First and foremost, it was an unmodified opinion, which is what we want. We saw no issues, no questioning costs, no findings that we needed to bring to your attention regarding the operations of the commission. The main page that you guys would be concerned with is page 15. It's a statement of revenues and expenditures. It is a little misleading this year because you finally have dispersed your new funds for the low-income housing. So it was artificially inflated for years and years, I think since 2018. If you take out that 743, you actually had an operating surplus of just under 74,750. Pretty close to your budget.
Yeah, no, I agree. Greg, I read them, and other than the planned drawdown of that transfer to the support the housing across the street, I think a previous year we transferred $200,000 to another low-income, moderate-income property on Sutton Avenue. So those are all planned, non-operating items, extraordinary items. So within the operating budget, our revenues exceeded our expenditures, and we have a sizable, comfortable working capital.
Yeah, your fund balance is 235,000, which is pretty healthy. As I said, it was artificially inflated for the past 5 years with about 700,000 of cash that was restricted. So
right, and the audit is available on our website if anyone wants to see it. It's filed with the state as well. I think we sent a copy to the Commerce Department, and I think technically our audit has to be done within 6 months of the close of the fiscal year. So back during October.
Months this year, so yeah, it worked out really well.
Right.
Hopefully we keep that momentum going, and again, everything in here is pretty straightforward. Like I said, no major changes from the previous year. No findings, no question costs, which is what you want to do.
Yeah, I do know that one favorable item I know is our revenues were a little ahead of budget because of our development fees that we collected, which helped support the operation of the so. Any questions? Right. Yeah. Any questions from the commission members? Okay, I think we'll take a vote to accept the audit report, and then we can file it with the state. Motion. Second. All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
And hard copies will be available tomorrow.
Oh, great. Yeah. So I think I was emailed to all the commission members, and we have I think it's online as well. So, but if we'll have hard copies available at the office if anyone's interested, and maybe give one to the City Hall staff as well. Thank you, Greg. Good seeing you again. Okay, next item under I think it's the continuation of the public hearing for the property at the 500 Veterans Memorial Parkway. Yeah, there it is. So we have our applicant here who will provide an update on some issues and items that we continue to discuss. So I'll have Mr. Belinsky come up and have him make a discussion of what will be presented tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Fagioli. Again, Josh Berlinski with the firm of Darrow Everett, representing the applicant Metacomet Development LLC. We have a few items just for the commission's consideration this evening. Before we get started, though, I know that two individuals from PAR Engineering are here. As the commission knows, PAR was commissioned to do peer reviews for both traffic/offsite improvements as well as stormwater. We submitted some rather comprehensive reports. We received responses to both of those peer reviews this week, and they were both gracious enough to come tonight at our invitation and just talk through their findings. So I thought it might be the right thing to do to let them go first and have Derek Hug speak on traffic and Bobby Sykes to speak on stormwater. And the commission can ask them any questions or go over any issues. And then we'll resume with our relatively brief presentation this evening as well. So if that works for you, I'll let either Derek or Bobby get going.
Thank you all. Again, my name is Derek Hug. I'm with PAR Corporation. I'm the managing engineer for traffic engineering. Back in May, I want to say, we issued our first set of comments on the traffic study. Well, we issued initially two sets of comments, one for the Manass and Associates report that was done in late 2023, and then on a letter that was submitted to DOT from Crossman Engineering that updated many of the things that were in the Manass report, but focused strictly on the state highway. So there were two sets of comments that were floating around out there. We received formal responses to comments in September on both of those reports. At this point, the Manass and Associates report is largely obsolete, and I did not do a formal response to that set of comments, but I did a couple of days ago submit yesterday a formal letter with my disposition on the response to comments submitted by Crossman on their letter. They also submitted an updated letter that expanded on what they had done previously. My initial comments, I had I believe 22 of them. The majority of those have been addressed to my satisfaction. What I'll do is I think I'll go through the ones that I think there's still some work that needs to be done or procedures that need to be fleshed out in some fashion. One thing that was somewhat vaguely, but pointed out in the updated study was that the applicant was willing to work with the city regarding city streets and do that in something of an iterative approach where this development is going to be built out over a number of years in different stages or different phases. But there is no detailed procedure for how that is either enforced or moves forward. And so I tried to read between the lines, and they can correct me if I did that incorrectly, that there may be traffic studies, interim traffic studies done for each of the sort of significant phases of the project as it's built out. And I personally like that approach because when you're doing the master plan for a master development that's supposed to be built out over a period of years, there were a lot of assumptions that need to be made. And inevitably, a certain percentage of those assumptions are going to be right, and a certain percentage of those assumptions are going to be wrong. If you do it in an iterative approach, there are far fewer assumptions that need to be made, and therefore the accuracy tends to be better. Not only that, but as you go through the development, as the different phases are developed, you have the benefit of learning from what happened in the earlier phases of development and applying that to the later phases of development. So I would support that approach. It's just that in the report, it's vague about how that. Next. One other issue is the left turn into the site at the main driveway on Veterans Memorial Park. So this is the driveway that is just east of the proposed roundabout at Lyon Avenue. There is some discussion going back and forth about what that left turn into the site should look like. It's already been decided there will not be a left turn out of the site at that location, but that a left turn into the site will be allowed. My previous comment on this was that based on the traffic study, there would be up to 150 left turns going into the development at that location in a single hour. And so my comment was this should be separated out as a left turn bay, but obviously we know that this is historic road. It's a scenic route. It needs treated carefully, and just blowing out extra lanes is not what we want to do here. But nonetheless, I'm concerned about the safety of that. If that's a through lane, the comment that came back was that it would be a de facto left turn lane because just east of that, the two lanes would then merge together into one, and therefore that left lane would essentially become a left turn bay, and that's probably true, but nonetheless, without it being specifically marked as such, there still is the expectation that you can go through there, and that leads to an increased risk of rear end crashes at a location that's relatively high speed. And I know speeds will probably decrease to some degree when you introduce the roundabout, but this location is about 1,000 feet, no, several hundred feet east of that roundabout. So there will be the opportunity for vehicles to increase their speed between those two locations. So my comment, my specific comment here was that this left turn bay should be included, should not be a de facto left turn bay or a trap lane that comes, you have two lanes leaving the roundabout, and then one of them just becomes a left turn bay and just kind of stops in the middle of nowhere. We call that a trap lane. That is also not what I think the treatment should be here. I think there should be one lane leaving that roundabout eastbound, or I guess southbound, and then a left turn pocket formed after that to make it clear that it's not a through lane. Anybody entering that lane is intending to stop to make that left turn.
So, turn only, essentially.
One other issue was the location of the westernmost driveway off Lyon Avenue, which is the one nearest to the roundabout. That driveway location, my comment was that it's awfully close to the roundabout location, and I'm concerned about interference between those two locations. That driveway, my understanding, has been slightly moved a little bit further away from the roundabout, and there is a promise that through RIDOT's physical alteration permit application procedures, a VISM analysis will be done of that roundabout, and that's all fine for RIDOT, but RIDOT doesn't necessarily care because Lion Avenue is not a state road. They don't really care if the queue backs up to this driveway. So I suspect that where that driveway is now, it's probably fine. If that Vism analysis is done and says that that queue isn't going to back up to the driveway, and we're not going to have interference between those two things, I'm content to allow it to be there. But again, as part of this process, if this board grants approval and then that analysis shows that that queue is going to back up to the driveway, I don't know that there's any way to force them to change it at that point. So again, it's more of a procedural thing than necessarily that there's a real problem. I think the biggest outstanding issue that I have that's still floating out there is the potential need for a second pedestrian crossing across Veterans Memorial Park. The applicant has noted that there's an extensive system of walkways, bikeways within the development, and clearly that's true. There are connections to the golf course that extend all the way to the eastern end, the northeastern end of the site, and ultimately connects to the neighborhoods to the north and east of the site. And just south of, on the opposite side of Veteran Memorial Parkway, there is a small trailhead for the East Bay Bike Path. That is also the spot where the East Bay Bike Path separates from Veterans Memorial Parkway and heads over to the Waterfront Cove crossing. So that is, in my view, a particular area of potential interest where pedestrians who are in that neighborhood to the north and east or are enjoying the trail system within the site and want to access the East Bay Bike Path, that seems like a pretty natural desire path. As it stands right now, for them to follow the dictated pedestrian paths to get to that trailhead or to get over to the East Bay Bike Path and continue toward Waterfront Cove, they would have to walk 1,000 feet to the north, then cross at the southern end of that roundabout, and then walk 1,000 feet to the south. And at the end of all of that, they have moved about, 50 or 60 feet as the crow flies. My belief is that pedestrians are going to cross there, whether there's a marked crossing. And if that is going to be in the natural desire path, we should mark it as a crosswalk and design it such that it is safe and fits within the parkway aesthetic. And that can be done. It does not have to be done with a light. It can be done by various traffic calming measures that can be worked on. But that is something that, to this point, the applicant has been resistant to include in their plans, and I think it's important that there's additional discussions about it. Other than that, the only other small issue, we've had an ongoing discussion about cut-throughs, particularly on Mercer Street. And there is a proposal in their traffic study to make Mercer at Veterans Memorial Parkway a right-in, right-out only, which would likely at least reduce any cut-throughs. But at the same time, you still have First Street. And I worry that the cut-throughs that would want to take a left in to Mercer, then they would no longer be able to do that. What they can do is just take a left on the First Street further up on the Parkway and just go down First Street to Mercer. It just changes how they do it. So I don't. And that this is becomes part of the benefit of the iterative method of doing these traffic studies is that we can hopefully identify if that's happening early on, and for later stages of the development include measures to try to further reduce those cut throughs if we're finding that it's becoming a problem. Because nobody can say, nobody's got a crystal ball, nobody can say exactly how much it may. And I think that's, I think those are all the issues that are left outstanding. All the rest of them that I had in here, I think have been adequate.
Okay, thank you. So there's actually 25 items you noted in your letter to Ray. And Ray, this was delivered to us yesterday? Or today? Okay. Okay, so this will be made available to the public, I assume, or has it been? I don't know if it's been uploaded to the website. Not yet. So we'll make this available to the public, but I think your main points just to capture. And again, you're working on behalf as an independent reviewer on behalf of the commission to review the studies provided by the applicant, so everyone knows what your role is here. So summaries your main issues. It's just somehow how to codify this iterative approach during the development phases, and maybe that's a condition of approval. I know we could take into that effect. I guess the second one is the left turn only lane onto the parkway into the facility, traveling south. Just so if somebody thinks it's a through lane, they can just keep on going and not realizing someone's taking a left. That could be a problematic. The proximity of the Lyon Avenue entrance on the parkway to the Rotary is is an issue, but also I think your biggest issue is some sort of a pedestrian safe crossing, just realizing people are just going to take the least resistance and maybe not take the formal crossing that's 1,000 feet north of them and just cross over at the cove at some point. So I guess that's something that they'd have to work with DOT and the scenic highway and the city, obviously, to design a safe crossing there that still respects the parkway, but also allows for safe crossing. Because right now, as somebody who walks over on the bike path a lot, there is no safe crossing on the parkway. So you pretty much have to make a dash at Lyon Avenue and the parkway. You just have to kind of there's not even any striping there, or I don't even think there's any yield or pedestrian passing signs that are along the parkway at all. So, I do know that there are some left turn only lanes further down the parkway. I think Broadway. I think there's a right hand turn on. So there is capacity to do that. We just have to see how we can make that possible in design here. So, all right, I think this is very helpful. Like I said, we'll make this available to the public. It brings up 25 items. We're just asking at the end of this that the applicant provide a formal response to address each comment that you notify that you still have some concerns. Those four sort of outline, and then I guess the Mercer Street cut through scenario. How do we move? Great. Any questions from the commission? Sure. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Again, we'll make this available, and this was a good review of the various traffic issues that we've had reviewed to date. So I think the public will find this very helpful. So, sure.
Good evening. My name is Bob Sykes. I'm a Park Corporation. I completed the review of the site. So we completed our original review of the stormwater back in March. It's in the supplemental December 2020. We offered originally about 37 comments. In response to comments we received, its engineer. And we recently completed a review of those responses and revisions and provided a letter today. So there was some significant revisions from the stormwater design from the December submission. Some of the on-site best management practices that were proposed, incorporation of some additional proprietary systems and But most of our comments were adequately to our satisfaction.
Yeah, I guess maybe just get a little bit closer, Bobby, so they can hear you.
Sure. So we have about 13 comments that they're relatively technical, but that still warrant some type of clarification or revision, in our opinion. So I can go through the outstanding items. The comments on the proposed site plans, we would be requesting that they incorporate additional pretreatment in accordance with DEM requirements for the infiltration practices, so that they can be maintained appropriately and we can ensure that they function in the future as designed. We've also asked for additional detail on access to the wet extended detention basin. It's one of the larger systems on site, and just a little bit more detail as how it's anticipated to be maintained, including gate locations and then consideration to routine maintenance and mowing. And then also on the site plans, we'd request updated landscaping plans showing the plantings within some of these systems. That was one of the previous comments. We just be requesting that those be provided. And then comments on the stormwater management design and report. We are requesting some confirmation on the field permeability testing that was completed and just that it was in accordance with DEM regulations. There wasn't a lot of backup information on how it was completed and when it was completed. And then we'd also be requesting groundwater elevations within the wet extended detention basin that they be reviewed. There was some conflicting information within the response to comments and also within the test pit logs. And there's some other technical things within the calculations. We requested some of the atomic concentrations be reviewed and incorporation of potentially some longer time of concentrations that might alter some of the calculations. So kind of reoccurring through our memo, our previous memo, we'd also request confirmation that if any of the observed groundwater elevations, rather than modeling, which is another method of reviewing estimated seasonal high groundwater, if the observed elevations are used within the design, that they're used in accordance with DEM requirements and they utilize the adjustment factors that DEM requires. Just again, to just confirm that the systems function as designed in the future. Same with soil classifications too. We'd request that the detail, these details be presented in a format that we can review. It was a significant amount of geotechnical information that was provided, and we're hoping it can be summarized a little bit better so that we can understand the soil classifications within some of these systems. We'd review, we request that there's some freeboard items that we'd like to be checked on some of the infiltration basins, but everything, they appear to have addressed most of our comments relative to that. And then we had a couple new comments from this round of review and some of the plan revisions that were incorporated. There is an infiltration basin that's credited for water quality that exceeds the allowable infiltration rates. So that would have to be removed, and then the water quality requirements would have to be reviewed, and potentially there would be a need for additional water quality throughout the site. We'd also request just an update on the status of the DEM and Army Corps permits. A lot of the things that we're requesting are likely going to be required by DEM as well. So like some of the detail relative to the soil evaluations and groundwater modeling, that could be provided to us for our review. And then I think our final new comment, the design was recently revised to incorporate two 36-inch drain pipes that discharge to the cove. And we'd request that, and that this system be reviewed and that it's confirmed that safe passage of a 100-year event is provided through the site, not necessarily through the conveyance, but that it's reviewed and, with increased rainfall intensities that we're experiencing, we just want to make sure that with the proposal to convey this significant amount of flow through a closed drainage system, that surcharge conditions are reviewed and
any negative impacts to any of the proposed structures are reviewed and understood. And we'd also request that confirmation that all the flows during those surcharge conditions are safely conveyed to the anticipated downstream design points, and none of those flows leave the site or contribute to any budding properties. Happy to answer any other questions. I think that summarizes the remaining items in our.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. So again, you're hired by the commission, on behalf of the commission, to review the stormwater engineering that's being proposed by the applicant. You've identified a number of items you'd like to see either further clarification or additional comments on. That report will be made available. Ray, has it been sent to you yet, or do you? Okay, so when it's I don't know if it has been emailed or not, but we'd like to post it on our website as soon as it's I don't know. We will make sure, because again, it's a very technical analysis. We'll make sure it gets uploaded so folks can understand. But the role here of you is you're acting on behalf of the commission to do a second set of eyes on the proposed stormwater solutions being discussed by the applicant. And I appreciate your emphasis on noting the sort of the rainfall activity we've had in the last few years. It's these rare occurrences are not so rare anymore. I do note that the property is largely sloped into the cove, and that's I think where most of the stormwater will end up eventually. But the key part of it is to make sure that it's treated and infiltrated before it actually gets discharged into the cove to protect the water quality there. So. And all of that analysis, I know you mentioned DM, the Army Corps, but I assume CRMC is also taking a look at all of that as well. And they'll have to have a permit that's satisfactory to them as well. So, great, thank you. Any other questions from the commission members? Again, we'll make it available, we'll post it online and send it out to the members, and also make it available to the public. I assume you have it and you'll be working on responses to it. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you to both Bobby and Derek. The stormwater peer review was distributed late this afternoon. So I believe the city has both peer review summaries to post on the website tomorrow. We did have the opportunity to review the peer review upon receipt. And Paul Bannon is here, and maybe we can have a real-time discussion with PAR about one or two elements of it, but just to, which I know will be exciting for everyone. And the microphone placement is really there to make it as awkward as possible, so that's great. But maybe what will, I do want to speak just to a couple of elements there, which is the iterative approach that Bobby mentioned. We agree with that, and we concur it should be taken. So as everyone knows, there's the phase 2, which is the commercial component as well as a portion of the residential. And then we've got phase 3, which is the balance of the residential. And we agree and think it's best practices to have that traffic study be revisited and have special attention paid to the Mercer cut through and other elements that PAR might identify in connection with that second generation traffic study. And we have no issue making that a condition for approval. Before I turn it over to Paul Bannon, the left turn on Veterans, which Bobby referred to, as you may recall, when we received a letter from DOT earlier this year, they had expressed similar reservations about that element, for lack of a better term. I think, like Bobby, they accept it subject to further engineering and participation and presentation, including but not limited to the VISM analysis. We adhere to that as well. So if the practice and the engineering and the simulations dictate that, we have no choice, but obviously that's DOT and scenic roadways jurisdiction, and wherever that goes, we obviously will adhere to that decision. I think PAR and DOT are aligned in that they both identified it as a potential area of concern and understood, and we'll see where the permitting at the state level takes us there. The last issue, which is I think the most sensitive one that PAR raised, is the second bike path access. And just so everyone knows what we're talking about, it's that juncture where the bike path curves up, where it then goes along parallel to Veterans Memorial Parkway. There's a small parking field immediately adjacent to that jut. And that's the intersection, I believe, that Bobby's referring to as a potential secondary bike path access. We have, the applicant has reviewed that concept and has, objected to it, for lack of a better term, like throughout. But I think it might be helpful, and we realize this isn't the conclusion of that dialogue, but just for Paul Bannon to get up and kind of explain our position and potential accommodations to there. And then we have further work to do with PAR in that regard, but I just want Paul Bannon to kind of explain our reasoning for that. So the commission or PAR don't think we're being particularly arbitrary in that regard. We have a rationale there. So Paul, if you want to just spend a minute there.
Good evening, Paul Bannon with Crossman Engineering. We initially looked at that when PAR raised that question. We have concerns relative to that location based on the geometry of the parkway at that location. It's on both a horizontal and vertical curve, and sight distance is an issue. How people or why people would cross there, that's also a question I have. We don't want people that are using that tiny bike path parking lot to access our site. So that's not something that should occur. It can be signed as such, and it's typically full, during the busy summer period. So no one should be parking at that location to access our property. The treatment of our property can be properly landscaped and directed so that there would be no physical connection or desire or line of short distance path to get to the bike path at that location. When our internal roadway system and sidewalks, and where the residential component of the project is located, is on the central driveway. And that central driveway is located, several hundred feet from the line of what would be a crossing. They would have to walk that way to cross there, and we can set up the landscaping and pedestrian paths to make that a non-desirable condition. Additionally, long-term, when across the street gets developed, there'll be a connection to the bike path through that property and be more direct from where we're proposing the crossing with line. So that was a consideration in Village of the Waterfront to have extension of the bike path all the way along the waterfront. So you had two options. So we think long-term that would be a potential connection from Lyon directly to the bike path instead of further south. So we feel that we can properly handle the pedestrian paths and how people are crossing and where people are crossing instead of adding a secondary crossing.
Right, so you're saying you would discourage people from entering the property from that vantage point, either through some buffering or landscaping?
Yes,
Making
right
it-
now it's all fenced and there's trees there, and so we'll incorporate the proper landscaping and pathways within the site to not direct pedestrians to cross.
Likely there would be no receiving point at the other end of the property to invite biking or pedestrians. They naturally might be inclined to just go to where they're invited into the property in the formal opening. So that's kind of your stance.
Yes. Okay. And as Josh had indicated, DOT raised several of those same issues relative to the driveway on Lyon, and they will be looking at that as part of the visit analysis. So both locations will have to justify the location and stacking those access points to the property.
I think the capacity of that parking lot is fairly limited.
Yes.
Maybe
30.
30 cars legally, right? Will do park,
That's a
sort of,
lot.
but generally it's on the weekends mostly. It's a little over, but
Yeah,
during the
it's just not relative to our property and the parkway geometry. It's just not a good or safe location.
okay. Thank you.
Again, that will be part of our ongoing interaction with PAR in terms of a formal written response. We've already forwarded the response on the stormwater to Bowler Engineering, and they are preparing their response. They expect to have it out next week, and our hope is that at the November DRC meeting, we will have both stormwater and traffic, knock on wood, concerns addressed, and concurrence with PAR on the fee remaining items. So, but again, I want to stress that that PAR has been an able and willing partner in the back and forth, and we appreciate their comprehensive approach to this, and they've made the project better as a result of their refinement. So thank you very much to both of you. We just have a couple more items to go over tonight. So, and I just want to update with regard to the archaeological element, and just so people are aware, we're in touch with both State Historic and the tribe, the National Historic Tribal Preservation Office, as to next steps, if any, at the property. That dialogue is ongoing. It's all good and constructive. And our expectation is that Deborah Cox from PAL will be here next month to provide the update / summary / written submission that was requested at the previous meeting. I think that was in August. So that is the schedule, is that Deb will be here to answer further questions and let you know where that process hopefully is concluded. But that's the schedule right now. So,
And on that, Judge, nothing's been conveyed to the city. We're not in receipt or possession of any updated.
so all that's happened is that there was submissions to State Historic, as I think we mentioned previously. That submission has been turned over to the Tribal Preservation Office. They have been in touch with both the state as well as the applicant in terms of questions and just about location and geography and processes going forward. And it's been positive and educational, and the tribe has been communicative at the tribal office, and State Historic, Charlotte Taylor especially has responded to our request. So, and Pal is leading the charge there, and she'll be here next month to kind of bring everyone up to speed and hopefully kind of put a bow on it as to what's gone on and how it played out.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you for that.
All right, so just a few things then remaining this evening. And then a couple of responses we got from members of the commission as well as the public. And then I just want to conclude with a brief revisiting of some of Ashley Sweet's testimony last month, which was substantive and comprehensive. And I just want to focus on a couple of those elements just for the commission's edification prior to adjournment this evening. Liam, could you please go to the David Coate resume real quickly, that attachment? So if everyone recalls, David Coate Consulting performed our noise study. I just wanted to bring forward his resume so everyone can see who we're dealing with here. He is considered one of the most renowned experts on acoustics and noise modeling in the region. Graduated from MIT. I've heard of it, and with a degree in mathematics. Also Westminster College with a degree in chemistry. He consults, as you can see in the second paragraph or the last paragraph, he consults in a broad range of acoustics and noise and vibration control. His experience includes noise and vibration data collection, analysis, and computer modeling for noise predictions, noise mitigation measures, preparation of noise reports for environmental impact statements, and presentations during hearings and public meetings. He has extensive computer experience, including a proficiency in several programming languages. Could you go to the next page, please? So I just keep going on as so we can see Mr. Coate's various areas of expertise in the architectural building acoustics. As the commission may recall, Mr. Coate actually performed a pinpoint HVAC analysis for each building proposed to be constructed. The conclusion of which is that the noise impact of that once everything was constructed was minimal in terms of buildings. As Mr. Coate put it to some of us when we were speaking with him, buildings really don't make noise. So the HVAC systems were the ones that do. He measured them using a very precise computer program. The exhibit to his report shows all the placements, negligible impact on the community. He also specializes in highway noise, rail noise, and aircraft noise, as well as amphitheater sound impact analysis. I should have deleted that, given that the amphitheater has been a bugaboo for us. It's just a visual amenity, as well as GIS elements. I just want to go through his references, Liam, if you could keep scrolling. So it's 4 pages. And as you can see that I believe he's worked for all 4 divisions of the armed forces. He's worked for various cities and towns in New England. He's worked for Fortune 50 companies in their noise modeling. He is the go-to for site improvement projects throughout the Northeast and up and down the East Coast. He is, if not the premier expert in the field, he is one of them. And so we engaged him. Obviously, no preconceived notions as to what he would or would not report. He submitted an initial noise study. At the request of the commission, we supplemented it to include the HVAC analysis as well as further updates on the highway element, on the Veterans Memorial Parkway element. And we submitted that and we answered some questions. We did receive some questions from a member of the public. I did forward Mr. Coates' responses to the commission earlier today, actually. Liam, could you pull up the email that says Metacomet noise studies, please? Great. So Dan Bodwin submitted an email mission to Ray and Bill, I think in September or August. He forwarded again in September. We wanted to make sure that Mr. Coates saw it and had an opportunity to respond. I want to go through his answers in detail. They're brief, but briefly, one of the points that Mr. Bodwin asked for was that the adjusted traffic counts from the Crossman study be used instead of the Vaness study, which is what Mr. Coates used. As we had mentioned several months ago, that the Vaness study, although it spoke to a previous iteration of the project, used a COVID-adjusted factor for its counts that was significantly in excess of both the actual counts there, because Jeffrey Dirk, who was the engineer at Vaness, was trying to account for COVID. So he used artificially inflated counts. Accordingly, there's a corresponding upward adjustment of the counts for his projected traffic build-out because he started from a higher level than was really there. So pursuant to Mr. Bowden's response, we asked Mr. Coates to look at the numbers from the Crossman study. Paul Bannon concluded that the numbers are in fact lower, and thus they would in all likelihood produce a negligible lower amount of noise based on the correct configuration of the project. With regard to truck traffic, we had been asked to just revisit the analysis there. Mr. Coates' analysis is limited to the definition of heavy trucks. Of all of the proposed uses at the development, the only use that requires heavy trucks would be the grocer. And the grocer estimates, based on industry standards, upwards of 30 trucks a day. Mr. Coates confirmed, and we asked him to revisit this, that the noise impact of 30 trucks a day along Veterans Memorial Parkway is negligible. It is a fraction of the overall noise effect that the traffic has upon the surrounding neighborhoods. There is, I know some members of the public live at Kettle Point, as do I. There's about 260 apartments and 60-something condominiums, as well as a 6-story medical office facility. There's no big trucks that go to that development. There is FedEx, and there is medical services that go to University Orthopedics. Except for movers, there's no big trucks at a residential development. And there's no big, and if you take 260 and you take 0 and you multiply 0 times 890 units, it's still 0. So we don't anticipate big trucks at the residential component of the development. Nor do we expect heavy trucks to service any other commercial element of the development. It's just the grocers. It's just 30 trucks a day. Along Veterans Memorial Parkway, in that specific portion of Lyons, well short of the residential neighborhood, which truck traffic would be permitted for the very limited purpose of making deliveries to improvements with a Veterans Memorial Parkway address. That is allowed per the ordinance. That is the plan of events. And there is no anticipated interruption or truck traffic going through neighborhoods adjacent to the development. The city doesn't allow it, and we do not propose it. Finally, I just want to go through the responses in general. The first one was asking to use the Crossman numbers based on the correct square footage. I already addressed that. As we mentioned, and it's in yellow, the updated traffic data actually has lower future volumes and speeds. The grocery trucks analyzed, as I mentioned, the 30 trucks. fall into the Federal Highway Administration heavy truck category. Those are the only trucks that make a distinction from a noise standpoint. That's why Mr. Coate included them. The projections do not include construction vehicles that will serve the development over the 10-year build out of the project. That is correct. The construction vehicles themselves are along Veterans Memorial Parkway. They might traverse over Lions. They can't access the site through any other way. They certainly can't access it through the emergency access in which the clubhouse is to be located. They're limited access rights. And obviously until there's, until new curb cuts are installed, they'd have to use the existing access point along Vets to begin with. As it relates to, let's put a pin in that concept because I want to go back to construction sequencing in a moment. Again, there was an inquiry as to an underestimation of vehicle and truck traffic, more analysis on the noise that will be generated by truck traffic. Mr. Coate revisited it at our request and said it's a negligible impact. And the truck traffic noise will have a minimal impact throughout the neighborhood. And then finally, there was a reference to the 50 decibel threshold. It states there should be a discussion of how the 50 decibel threshold relates to the projected noise levels on Lyon Avenue, 4th Street in the residential section. Mr. Coate, to be candid, wasn't sure how to respond to that since the town city noise ordinances don't apply to traffic. So because it's a moving target, right? So the noise ordinance relates to ongoing activity in the immediate vicinity of the improvement or individual or structures that are subject to the noise. So we included the federal and state standard for reference purposes, although they're not necessarily applicable, just to show that all of the traffic contemplated as a result of the development is well below the state or federal standard that might otherwise be applied in a different physical setting. So I do want to thank the public for submitting those comments. We're hopeful that we answer them to his satisfaction, and hopefully we've finished that one. Liam, can we go to, let's go to actually the one that talks about the site plan. So can you please open that tab real quick? Overall site rendering. Great. Let's talk about construction noise and sequencing for a moment. So as we've previously established, and as I believe the commission has previously approved, what we call phase 2 is the improvements in green or gray, whatever your vintage point might be. It is the commercial element as well as a few of the residential buildings just below it, including the village corridor. So there have been some concerns raised about construction noise. The largest improvement on phase 2 was the grocer, which is further away from any residence than University Orthopedics is to residents on Veterans Memorial Parkway further down. There is a 9.5 acre buffer that's being donated to the city. I understand we're only talking about the first 5 years of project build out, but there are no improvements in the immediate vicinity of a neighborhood that should have any effect on noise impact on the study, on the public, excuse me. We are along Veterans Memorial Parkway, and this is by design, by the way. We are on Veterans Memorial Parkway. We are on Lions, parallel and across the street from an office park. This development is being sequenced, and the infrastructure will be built in, but there's no vertical construction within earshot of residences, excuse me, for up to 5 years. We agree, and we will agree as a condition to this approval, should we be so fortunate, that we put forth as a condition to proceeding with phase 3, a construction sequencing plan and a construction control plan that shows that we've made the best efforts possible to reduce noise pollution and sequencing in order to provide as much comfort as possible within reason for neighbors and the public within that phase 3 area. Again, whereas phase 2 is still proximity, we still have the buffer of the donated land between the residents and any proposed improvements. I understand that's further down the line. I don't mean to dismiss the severity of it. We agree that we have to submit to the commission as a condition of proceeding to phase 3, a construction management plan acceptable to the commission. That's more than reasonable. But I just want to make clear of the fact that the immediate construction of the short-term project, no members of the public are going to be affected by it. There's nothing that's more than 4 stories of residence. And there's nothing more than, for the commercial, there's maybe 2 stories. Depending what the height of the grocer is, it could be maybe a little bit more, but obviously it's a 1-story building with a high ceiling. So I just want to put this in perspective that, again, you've got Kettle Point, which I think we all agree was a huge success. You have construction that was much closer to residences, for which there was no noise plan, there was no mitigation plan, there was no construction plan. I assure you none of this took place. But we are willing to agree to it here. It's a bigger project. We understand the issues, the concerns that have been raised, but we also want to impose just a little degree of reasonableness upon what's going on. And just realize that the office park might not have the same concerns as the residents in the back of it. So I do want to lay that out as a possible condition, a potential condition that we're more than willing to agree. And we are keeping a list of them. So when the juncture comes, when we'll ask for approval, we'll list all the conditions that have been discussed over the last 9 months and attach them to our approval for the commission's benefit. All right. Last element here, please. Oh, while we're on it, can we go to Liam the picture that's Parkway Scenic PNG, please? That picture, one of the 2 photographs. Great. This is a picture of Veterans Memorial Parkway further up past Kettle Point. I think around Squantum, Paul, is that right? This is lovely and beautiful. It's forested. It's at the right time of year. We understand the concerns about the nature of the parkway and maintaining its character. For those of us that remember the Kettle Point permitting, there were significant deviations in Veterans Memorial Parkway, part of Kettle Point. I believe there was a second curb cut introduced to Veterans Memorial Parkway. There was significant landscaping and element. I mean, there was a lot of changes that still maintain the element and characteristics of the parkway. And this is a portion just west of it. Can we go to the second picture, please? Parkway frontage. And then we got this. So I am as big a fan of a dilapidated fence as anyone. This is the view of directly across the street from the Metacomet property. I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing here, folks. This is the proposed location of the roundabout. I am all for preserving the character of Veterans Memorial Parkway. I live off of Veterans Memorial Parkway. I have nothing but good things to say about the city of East Providence. I'm not necessarily certain what we're preserving right here. We propose a roundabout with landscaping and a pedestrian crossway and a visual improvement to what's going on here. I'm going to get to the analysis of whether or not this is in keeping with the character of the parkway, but I think it's important to point out that there are certain visual elements of the parkway that we all think of that we hold in the highest regard. And there's certain portions when you're like, so maybe this is one of them. And maybe this is one of them that could use some work that will be brought about by virtue of the roundabout. Just putting that out there for the commission's consideration. All right, can we go to Ashley Sweet's resume, please? Liam, you're doing a great job. You're the best one so far, by the way. So this is Ashley Sweet's resume. She was here last month. She has a resume that is most impressive, but I don't think she did herself the proper service and went over it last month when she was here. So I just want to recap it. Ashley is currently the senior planner at Weston and Sampson. That is one of the premier planning consultants in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. He was formerly the planner for Exeter, as well as Charleston and Hopkinton. He is also currently the interim planner for the town of Tiverton. He has worked as an intern at the Jamestown Planning Office. He has a Master of Community Planning, Concentration, Environmental Planning from URI. She has been engaged and active in the planning space for almost 20 years. She has been, for those of you that know some of the cities and towns in which she's worked, those are not, she has been exposed to various types of development projects, and in her capacity as a consultant at Weston and Sampson, she has seen some of the biggest development projects in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. She knows what she's talking about when she made her review. I want to point out a couple elements of her presentation. She did a PowerPoint, but I think there's some certain elements here that we could go through. I just want to make sure this is the expert that we retained. We submitted a report that is now part of the record. We want to call a few elements to your attention. Liam, can you go to the report, please? It is called Metacomet Report. All right. Okay. Liam, could you start with page 7? Not a page 7. Let's keep going. I'm sorry. Okay, that's it. Thank you. So you can make it a little bigger. That would be super. But I just want to call it this is the beginning of, first of all, Ashley summarized the DOT process, whereby confirming since veterans is classified as a state maintained road, a PAP will be required, as will scenic roadways. She also begins in this element to discuss the consistency of the proposed development with the zoning ordinance. And the proposed development complies with the majority of the requirements of the zoning district and sub-district, which designates a portion of the areas of open space and includes the overlay district, known as the Metacomet district. So she then goes on to 2 pages to go over the zoning consistency. I don't need to revisit that. She did that. But I just want you to know that she went over all the elements of the city zoning ordinance, as well as the comprehensive plan, to identify the consistency of this project. Liam, could you go to page 10 of the report, please? All right, stop here, please. So this is what a planning report generally does, for those of you that are new to this experience. And over the next 6 pages, Ashley then goes through every element in the East Providence Comprehensive Plan that, in her expert opinion, this application complies with. Such as in the first one, the challenge for the city is to ensure quality development of the remaining undeveloped lands and the redevelopment of land for new uses, such as land in the waterfront district, while protecting the quality of life for residents, protecting the natural resources of the city, and creating an environment that promote a favorable economic climate. Her conclusion: the proposed mixed-use development would provide a range of opportunities for residents through the development of housing, retail, service, business, recreation opportunities, and open space. The project is designed to offer high-quality housing and services, which will offer additional housing and economic development opportunities in the city, while also protecting natural resources through open space protection. That's an important concern for the city of East Providence. We have aspired to meet it. The next 4 pages are just the various elements in the comprehensive plan, and it shows the compliance. Can you please go to page 13 of the report, Liam? There you go. The one in the middle, link the approval of new development proposals, including infill proposals, to the existing capabilities of the infrastructure. This is her expert opinion. As shown in figure 6 of this report, the city has identified this general area for infill development and discussed and planned for infrastructure to support such. The project proposes to construct the roundabout at the intersection of Veterans Memorial Parkway and Lyon Avenue. Her expert opinion is that the roundabout achieves compliance with this element. All right, let's, I think one more. Liam, could you please go to page 25 of her report? Access curb cuts, signalization, and related roadway issues. Perfect. All right. I'm going to read these 3 paragraphs because this is analysis. This is the kind of expert testimony that the city deserves, the Waterfront Commission needed to hear, and that we needed to convince ourselves of that this was the right path. But I think there have been various arguments raised over the last 9 months that perhaps this doesn't comply, that perhaps we are supposed to forget that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a roundabout was approved as part of the village at the waterfront, that in the district plan, the waterfront district plan from 2003, that a roundabout was actually proposed at the end of Veterans Memorial Parkway. Those things are true, they remain the case, but with regard to this proposed application, I want to read these paragraphs specifically. The waterfront plan recognizes that redevelopment along the waterfront could negatively impact the parkway if not properly designed. The waterfront plan calls for development that is proportional to the existing roadway function and capacity. Limiting of curb cuts in their size and location is encouraged and signage limited in amount and scale. The waterfront plan identifies traffic signalization as not in keeping with the character of the parkway, and that development that warrants either signalization or widening of the parkway should be prohibited. The proposed development achieves compliance with these recommended standards through the installation of a roundabout to mitigate traffic impacts from the proposed development. The waterfront plan clearly contemplates that in order to realize the full potential of the waterfront district, improvements to the parkway will be necessary. The waterfront plan mitigates these impacts by requiring that the techniques employed be in keeping with the character of the existing roadway and specifically calls out the installation of roundabouts as an acceptable method to do so. The traffic study submitted as part of this project determined that the proposed development will not decrease the level of service and that with the proposed improvements to the parkway, traffic conditions will remain as they are presently. The installation of a roundabout at Line Avenue, ensures that the proposed redevelopment along the parkway is proportional to the existing roadway function and capacity through an improved mitigation technique. Impacts on the parkway are further mitigated by placing smaller scale buildings, both in massing and in height, adjacent to the parkway, with larger buildings located towards the center of the development to minimize the impact on the parkway and on adjacent residential uses. Expert testimony, a comprehensive analysis of the comprehensive plan and the waterfront district plan, conclusions that align with the application. We have endeavored over the last 8 months to provide this commission and the design review committee with as comprehensive a summary as we can as to why we believe this application satisfies the relevant criteria in order to allow it to proceed. I am calling out these specific elements tonight because over time, if you keep on hearing something enough, you're like, is there something to that? We want to point out that the experts that we've retained and the consultants we've hired have been engaged to both respond to points that are raised in due course over the 9 months of hearings, as well as to share their conclusions that this development is right from both a legal and regulatory standpoint. That's all we have tonight. I thank you for the time and the patience. I know I speak quickly, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Mr. Bannon is here as well. If there's any residual traffic concerns, but otherwise, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Josh. Just to kind of summarize what was presented tonight. So you've agreed to respond to the comments by PAR for the traffic, the stormwater. You've indicated a willingness to possibly make a condition of approval requiring updated traffic reviews as phasing. You've indicated that you'll look for a new updated noise study as residential construction continues in phase 4, I guess it is, 3, whatever, the one towards the back, towards the back. And you're contending that the development, conforms to the condition of the parkway in the sense that the development is proportional, that the roundabouts mitigate any need for traffic signalization. So there is a modest widening of the parkway, though. I know for the rotary, there is that issue there. But you're saying that despite that, you feel that the trade-off for the roundabout is far better than, say, a traffic signal that obviously was clearly prohibited there. So, and then one of the other things I was looking into, I was meaning to speak to the building inspector. I know that there are certain standards that contractors have to abide by when they're doing construction in the city. Certain hours they have to operate within. And I haven't had a chance to connect with him, but I know that there's a large construction project going on in Martin Middle School, right in the middle of a neighborhood. I think it's it's a fairly large addition there. So I was going to ask if there's any special considerations that govern that construction that perhaps we should consider doing here for this particular project as well. That construction is very visible from the street, and I don't know the hours of operation of it, but I just wanted to check in with him to see if there's something we should consider that's being employed at that development site that we should think about, making a condition here of the construction at the parkway. So I think that's a good summary for, I think, what I've heard tonight, and we understand that there's additional work to be done on the archaeological survey, and I know you're reaching out to city staff to complete the public safety study. So any questions or comments from the commission members, what we've heard?
Chair, you talked about 9 months. And we went fairly detailed in how you think your proposed development complies with the area and intent of the waterfront. Do you have a timeline when you're going to seek final approval from this?
Not yet. Soon.
And just one last question on the consistency with the comp plan. That's a finding that the planning board makes, right, in this case as well. I think, I don't know if they've already done that or they have to weigh in on that before. final approval.
They make a finding that I think is more of a recommendation to this commission.
And again, that hasn't happened yet, I don't think. No. Okay, all right, great. So, obviously that issue will be weighed in by the planning board for the, consistency with the comp plan, so. Okay, all right, well, thank you. There's a lot to digest tonight, so. Any other additional comments from your applicant? Taking a breather, okay. So we'll open it up for public hearing or questions or comments from the public.
First of all, I wanted to say that I'm happy to hear all the discussions about the pedestrian and the bike access that have been discussed tonight. One thing that came up quite a few months ago when I think Mr. Bannon was presenting the roundabout and where the crosswalk would be, and then how you cut through the development and then come out on Lion Avenue. And I raised a concern then, and I didn't hear it tonight. So if I'm coming back and I want to go back to the bike and I'm on Lion, and as a biker, I'm on the other side of the street in the development. And now I want to cross the parkway. I have to cross Lion, come through the development to get to the parkway. Yet, Lion seems like it's going to be really busy there because you have the exit that you guys are concerned about, that's too close to the roundabout. You have the trucks coming in to go to the grocery store. But I have to cross the street there to get into the development to get to the bike. I hear a lot about coming from the bike path to the development, but nothing about the spacing and the access from Lion, cross Lion, back into the development, and then back to the bike. I brought this up months ago when you first showed the plan, but I haven't seen any changes or have heard any considerations to the safety there. And again, I bring up the truck also, because the trucks you mentioned tonight will be accessing the grocer online. And that's where I will be on my bike, or on my legs. So I think that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. I think that's something else that perhaps we could, maybe PAR to, weigh in on that as well. Provide some suggestions. You mentioned the truck traffic, though. The trucks to the grocery store are going to enter in through the parkway, through the roundabout, or down through Lion? Both? Okay. Okay, so there's a chance a large truck's probably not going to go through a roundabout. I would think be more likely to go down Lion. Okay.
The roundabout will be designed to accommodate that left turn and right turn to and from the freeway.
For large trucks.
It'll be from, the north 195 left turn to Lion, first driveway in, and then loop out.
Okay,
And we're proposing sidewalks all along Lion Ave. They're not there today.
so from Lion down to Mercer?
There'll be that connection. The city just recently completed their sidewalk and roadway improvement to Warren Ave. We're going to have a connection there along the park, and we're going to run a brand new sidewalk all along Lion Ave to Veterans Memorial Parkway. We'll have a wider path for that bike path connection for dual use of pedestrians and bicyclists.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Renee Chicoine. Yep. So I love the sidewalks, and the sidewalks, by the way, are great on Lion. And I do recall that there will be a sidewalk on this side of the street, but as a biker, you're not supposed to be on the side. I'm going to be still on the other side of the street on a bike. You're supposed to ride with, I'm not going to be riding my bike on the sidewalk. And I understand there'll only be a sidewalk on. So that doesn't solve the bike issue. I'm sorry? but I'm not supposed to be on, wait, there's not gonna be.
Yeah, it's difficult to follow. So you're saying that sidewalks will be on both sides of Lion Avenue?
I
being-
thought they were only
that's
gonna
what-
be on one side of Lion Avenue. They're, right, just one side, right? Yeah, just the development side.
Okay. No, wait a minute. Let's see if he can
other
respond. So.
There'll be, as you go down the road, there'll be a sidewalk on one side, whether it's on our side or the Pierce Field side. So where our second driveway is to the east, that there'll be a crossing there over the park and then connecting to the sidewalks they just built to the east.
Yeah, so I think the concern is if the sidewalks installed on where the Little League fields are, but essentially that's where people park. There's really no, I mean.
Oh, there's a defined
Right.
pedestrian path
Right.
along Lion Ave on that side. We talked to Dan, and part of his work to the east in the reconstruction, so.
Okay, so that's been reviewed with city staff in terms of what,
We've spoken to them on that.
so they're saying there'll be a pedestrian bike access on the other side.
It's
Not-
a-
so,
as-
you know,
as
It's
she
an all
indicated.
purpose path.
As she indicated, there'll be sidewalks
Okay,
along Lion for pedestrians. The bicyclists it will be in the road. It'll be a shared, there's no shoulder on the road, so that can be, the signage can be enhanced for cyclists along that segment. Biking or,
If I'm lying, it
biking?
doesn't matter. Biking or I'm lying. How do I get? How do I get?
You have a sidewalk all the way from Warren Ave to
Well, I need to be on
Veterans
the
Memorial
roundabout.
Parkway.
So I need to get.
We're probably just gonna do one.
How
Because
do
there's,
I get?
it's all
south of the
connected.
round-
It's all connected.
is there something, Josh, that maybe you could send us, that illustrate us, that we can share with Renee visually, just, maybe at a staff level? So. Okay, I guess Steve had a comment here he wanted to make, so.
My laser finger. You can see from. Proposing open space area. And then that sidewalk is connected with source all the way down. The circle. There's a sidewalk all along. You cross now, there's no crossing, right? You're rolling the dice. Hold on. So when there's an access path, there's a walkway across here.
That makes not what I don't-
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
We'll just need to make sure that the path there is designed with the proper width to, similar to what the bike path is, so it'll allow people on bikes and people to walk on the same thing. So going to the bike path and coming from the bike path is the same route.
I think keeping it consistent might be a good way to, minimize the confusion. So that's maybe something we could, discuss at a future meeting, maybe to kind of focus in a little bit on that. But, because the nature of the bike path, it will likely be a fair amount of bike traffic into the facility. So, okay, anybody else from the public?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Candy Steele. I just wanted to reiterate for anyone watching out there, as Chairman Fazioli said, that these gentlemen from PAR Engineering are independent third-party experts. And I also want to clarify that Mr. Bannon, Mr. Coate, Ms. Sweet are experts retained by Marshall and are not necessarily independent third-party experts. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Evening, Heather Andrade. I just have a question that I asked you before about, Josh. It says, an exception to the land, a right of way from Metacomet to, I'm trying to, yes, Moran land. I asked you about that before. It's on the deed. Can you explain where that is? It was months ago. Oh, well, and also who owns the land that the rotary is supposed to be on?
Well, I think it's the state and it's, there's some private. Right, yeah, there's
Oh,
some
who's-
there's private owners that have to, I think, accommodate the build out of the rotary after roundabout.
Who are the private owners?
Well, I think it's the medical office, right? And then whoever owns the property across the street, which I believe is Rhode Island Waterfront Enterprises.
Is Marshall's linked with Rhode Island Waterfront? They didn't have any land over there? So, okay, all right, and
If you could give us some background on this issue of,
Question about the reservation of the language in the deed. And we looked into it, and our response is that we reviewed the deed into the property, and we have title insurance, and we have a survey, and we are confident that our boundaries are adequately shown in the deed and are located on the survey for which we have title insurance, and that's all we're concerned about. So I thank you for bringing the issue to our attention. We revisit our claim and our rights, and we're confident that we've properly identified the property and that the boundaries are as we thought them to be.
and Josh, who did your title work? Is there?
Chicago Title Insurance Company provided the policy, and we had a survey done. And I think there was a further survey done in connection with the administrative subdivision plan. And we're confident that the property has been properly staked, that ownership is non-issue, and that we're properly insured in case any issues should arise.
And that's all recorded in the land evidence records of the city.
The title policy is not recorded.
At least
And I
the,
believe the subdivision plan has been recorded, but the property obviously hasn't been conveyed to the city until the development.
well, no, I mean, just the actual, when the marshals bought the property.
There's a
transact-
plan, I don't recall, Bill, if the survey is recorded, but there is an administrative subdivision plan that shows the boundaries of the property.
Right.
That's properly staked. And it
That's
matches
on
our
record
deed.
somewhere, right? That's on record,
That's on
obviously
record,
separate
absolutely.
somewhere, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
To the extent that there are any questions about ownership of private property, this commission and no public body can determine those questions. That's a matter for the Superior Court to decide if any dispute arises.
I am just asking because in the deed, it says, with the exception of this land. So I want to know where that land was. You don't know? Seriously? What about the other thing, 1616, where the land was changed? Do you know anything about that? It's the exception to your land, right here. And you can't.
Yeah, I think Heather, Amy said that those issues would have to be reviewed by a court.
But they're right here, so if they're in their plan, shouldn't we have an explanation on it?
I think it's outside the purview of the commission to determine what the proper boundaries of the property are. I think that those decisions have already been made.
They are actually, Marshall's actually wrote this and said the
Yeah, I don't know it's hard for me I don't know what you're referring to. What is it that you have?
it's the right of way from Metacomet to Pierce. I think, and it's accepted from the land, from the Marshall land.
I
So I was just wondering where the dimensions, where it is on that map. You can even point to it.
I think if the state has any issue with with the proposed development here, Marshall is gonna know about it. So,
Marshall does know about it. They wrote it right here. They accepted it. It's not included in the Marshall land. So why can't,
So Heather, it's really hard because we don't know what you're referring to or what you have in your possession, or if you've discussed it with Josh. I don't know what it is,
you know
so.
what it is? It's what Marshall put out. You know what I mean?
so I think along with the application, there was a boundary survey submitted, right? So we have a boundary survey. Unless the commission, and even if the commission were to get a conflicting boundary survey that calls into question the original survey that the applicant was submitted, I've always consistently advised municipal clients, ownership is not a matter that municipal boards can determine. If an applicant submits a survey and the neighbor says, well, part of the property that you say is mine, you say is yours is actually mine, that's a matter that only the Superior Court in Rhode Island can determine, who owns what.
Well, maybe you guys
I don't claim to be an attorney, but wouldn't you need another party claiming ownership of the land?
Yes.
That's beyond the purview of this commission.
I am just saying what they wrote down is accepted from their boundaries. Why don't we have the right to know exactly where that is? It's not included in the Marshall Plan. And you,
I think the only, I think if the question is what is the boundaries, the answer that Marshall has submitted is the survey.
no, I want to, it's not the bound. I want to know where this piece of land, I have the measurements. I mean, if I sent the measurements to one of you, would you be able to show me exactly where that was?
It's hard to say. I have no idea. I'm not really somebody that's familiar with land boundaries or
I mean, this is
surveys.
supposed to be,
Are you saying that they don't own the land or a portion of the land?
I'm saying that it looks like they don't. It's
Oh.
accepted from their land.
Well, I guess if there's a question of ownership, that's a risk that they've taken, whether or not they have a claim on the land. So that's really, you know,
Under title insurance policy?
All I'm asking for is I want to know where it is on the map. It's hilarious that you can't tell me. All right, and well, that's good.
okay, Heather.
wasn't-
Again, I don't.
I
It's
do have something else.
sure.
I was amused that you said you were going to just put a bow on it on the archaeological survey, because isn't there a phase 2 coming? Yeah, so no bow. No bow. All right.
Okay, I don't recognize that. I don't understand that reference myself. But the survey is the whole property, right? It's okay. Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Dan Bodwin. I'm a resident of Kettle Point. Josh, I didn't know you were a neighbor. See you around campus sometime.
I think Josh is in the rental units, right? Josh? You probably don't mingle with the condo owners, do you? So.
Everyone's talking about qualifications tonight, and I certainly have no qualms with the noise consultant. I mean, obviously one of the best in the field. My qualifications, I probably mentioned this before, is I have a master's in urban planning. I was a practicing urban planner for almost 45 years. I'm retired now. During that time, I was a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I was actually president of the Rhode Island chapter for a few years. So I have a little bit of background as well that hopefully you can take into consideration on the comments. I just want to talk about the noise comments that came out tonight. Just a few. The whole purpose of this is to give the commission adequate noise so they can make some good judgments as to what effect the traffic will have, not only in traffic performance, but on the quality of life of the neighborhood. And I think you need more information. I'm glad to see that the PAR study, PAR peer review, the second one is done now, because I think that will add some good information to the whole analysis. One of the comments that came back to my comments was on traffic counts. And I didn't quite understand it because the traffic counts and the noise levels were the same in the December study, in the August study, and in the comments that came back just the other day. The traffic counts are the same, the noise is the same. No question the traffic will increase on Fort and Lyon, and there will be some noise that's noticeable. So that's something to really think about going forward. I think the idea of doing traffic studies as the plan and the progress progresses is good. I like to see that. And I think you should set some criteria as to what you're looking for when those plans come in. What are the levels of noise, the criteria for noise levels? What are the levels for the number of traffic that might be generated, particularly on Fort and Lyon? But I think that's a good idea. There was another comment about noise projections on truck traffic. I mean, this is a serious issue. This is the first time that, yes, trucks should be allowed on Veterans Memorial Parkway. Every study says it should be discouraged. The stewardship plan for the HUD says the same thing. Trucks shouldn't be permitted. And yet here they are, trucks coming on there. So it's a serious issue.
And one of the things is how much is it going to generate? And yes, the supermarket will have the most, but there's other big users there. There's a 10,000 square foot liquor store. There's almost a 15,000 square foot drugstore that they can build. So there's a lot of, and then we'll introduce trucks. So how do you prevent other trucks from getting on? It's a serious issue that needs to be thought about in terms of introducing trucks to the vets. There's another question about construction vehicles. Again, 10 years, it could be a lot of construction vehicles. And I know the answer has been, we don't know. But I know Marshall to be a very sophisticated builder. They know what they're going to build. They probably have projections out there as to what it's going to take. And I think with a little bit of work, Marshall could estimate, okay, these are going to be the construction vehicles that we expect to visit the site during certain phases, or at least some estimate of it. I think you can obtain that. And I think that's important information that this commission should have when it enters, when it really takes, a comprehensive look at the effects of this. Those are basically my comments in response to the consultant response. Basically, it's, how do we protect the neighborhoods? Now, when you think of truck traffic, think of the neighborhood coming from Providence. You can actually make that movement now, right? You can go south. On your left, you'll see a lot of homes that front right on the vets. A lot of neighborhoods that are right on the vets. The first time, they're going to see a lot of trucks. And yes, it doesn't meet any criteria for the contours and the federals and all that stuff, but individual in a house is going to know a difference. Hey, there's a lot of trucks on that vets, and what does that mean? I don't know. That's up for everyone to decide here as to the importance of that to the quality of life of the neighborhood in the area. Those are my comments tonight. I'll have some future comments on some other studies, but that's it tonight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else in the public? Okay, great. Any questions or comments from the commission members at this point? Okay, I think we'll have to take a vote to continue the hearing.
November 21st is the next scheduled meeting date for the Waterfront Commission.
Can I have a motion that we continue the hearing to November 21st? Second, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, motion passes. Hearing will be continued to November 21st. So the only other item on the agenda is the staff report, Ray. That's the clubhouse and not the maintenance building you're talking about? Yeah. Thank you. Any questions for Ray? Have a motion to adjourn. Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. Motion, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.